everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar tonight. For those of you who are here live or those of you who are watching the recording later, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me for this webinar. We might have an extra visitor for this one. My cat Sam is right below me, and he likes to be a part of webinars, so I apologize if he kind of wanders through the screen. Today we're talking about a topic that I work in quite a lot, which is digestion. And we're going to be looking at a few aspects. We're going to be taking the digestive system and looking at it as a whole. We're going to go through 3 specific parts of the digestive system, and we're going to look at what is out of balance in each of those sections. So you might, if you're dealing with digestive symptoms, you might be looking at it and saying, oh, my issue is there, or my issue is here. And then what we're going to do is spend most of our time looking at how to create balance. What are the step-by-step, actually really they're just like a handful of things that you can throw into your diet that can make a world of difference for your digestive system. And it's not going to be this really difficult cleanse that takes forever to do. It's really going to be simple ideas. If you're brand new to this webinar series, my name is Lisa Kilgore, and I'm doing a free webinar every month in 2017. And so this is June, when it's more than just tummy troubles. And I've been a registered holistic nutritionist since 2007 and worked with thousands of people at this point. My specialty is difficult digestive cases. I work not primarily, but a good chunk of my time with people with very, very difficult digestive cases, people who can't leave their house because their digestive system won't let them, or they've been dealing with symptoms for decades. So if you fall in that category, you're in the right place. We will be taking a bit more of a generalized view of digestion, and digestive cases are rarely a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing. But what we're going to talk about are really, really common fixes, things that I've seen work over and over and over again. But if you've tried these and you're thinking like, oh, Lisa, but I've done all of that, that's when one-on-one consult will work best for you. But until then, try these out because they can nip so many digestive issues in the bud. I do digestion because I know digestion. I lived on just absolute garbage food for most of my life until I was about 25. I survived on Skippy peanut butter and Fruit Loops and nothing much more than that other than some chocolate added in. And because of that, I developed a lot of digestive issues. And that included an incredibly stubborn, incredibly recurrent digestive or gut bacteria imbalance, which I was able to rebalance with one of these really simple steps. It just took me like a decade to get to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the digestive system as a whole, looking at indigestion, all of the symptoms, and then, as I said, we're going to look at the rebalance. This whole presentation is going to be about 25 minutes or so. I forgot to time it when I did a run through earlier, so I can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take. But at the end, I'm going to go through all of your questions. So if you're here live, thank you. Just type your questions into the chat area as we go. If you're watching the recording, you can watch through all of the questions. Chances are your question might be there, and if not, please feel free to send it to me afterwards. I'd love to hear from all of you. Feel free to email me. I'll give my email address at the end, and it's always on my website, lisakilgore.com. So let's dive in. Let's change the slide first. The first thing I want to look at is what is digestion? What is indigestion? Because a lot of times we have indigestion symptoms, and the truth is we just kind of pass them off as, oh, that's just a little bit of indigestion. But the truth is that it's incredibly common. 50% of us are dealing with indigestion. But what it's a sign of is that food isn't being broken down properly. You are not digesting well in digestion. And what that means is both undigested food particles, and that wreaks havoc with your gut bacteria. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But more than anything, is it creates poorly assimilated nutrients. These are nutrients that you've eaten, but now you can't use. Your body isn't able to absorb and assimilate them. We are literally what we eat. Every cell in our body is created by the food that we eat. But it's not just the food that we put into our mouth. We have to digest and assimilate it first. And that's kind of why digestion is always the cornerstone of holistic nutrition, is that we can eat all the best food in the world, but if we are not absorbing and assimilating and really getting that food into our body, it's not really doing anything. And so that's why we want to be looking at every symptom of indigestion as a potential imbalance that we need to rebalance. And here's just a small list of all the possible symptoms. These are just the more common ones. Heartburn and acid reflux, or GERD, they tend to be the main things that we call indigestion because they happen right after eating. That can be coughing, it can be burning in your throat, it can be a sore throat when you wake up in the morning, it can be just burping. There's quite a lot of symptoms that fall into heartburn. We'll look at that and what that really entails in a bit. Bloating, belching and gas, nausea and vomiting, and just having an acidic taste in your mouth, burning in your stomach or upper abdomen, cramping and pain, and irregularity. All of these are symptoms of indigestion. What we're going to do now is go through what each main section of our digestive system, and then what symptoms of imbalance come out of that. So that way you can take your symptoms and say, oh, here's the problem. And then we're going to look at how to rebalance that. And we're going to start with a very unsung hero of the digestive system, and that is the stomach. The stomach is kind of forgotten most of the time when we're looking at indigestion or digestion in general. One of the reasons why I work with so many people with digestive issues is that I also had a stomach problem, and so I can find it in people, and that tends to be that thing that can't be found. So when somebody comes to see me and they've been to see many different people and the problem is still happening, chances are it's a stomach problem. The stomach is a very important part of the digestive system. Digestion actually starts in the mouth. When you take a bite and you start chewing your food, the mechanical breakdown of chewing is really important, but also is the amylase, or the carbohydrate digesting enzyme that gets mixed in with the food in your mouth. And then you swallow. And now your stomach has to take over. So if you didn't chew your food very well, now your stomach has to deal with these giant chunks of food that only acid breaks down. And the stomach is a very high acid environment, and that is kind of forgotten nowadays. Antacids and proton pump inhibitors that not permanently, but while you're on the medication, reduce the acid in your stomach, can cause long-term absorption and assimilation problems because the stomach needs to be acidic. The stomach is at its best at a pH of about 2, and that fully breaks down mostly protein, a bit of fat, some minerals, and that's pretty much it. Carbohydrates, all forms of carbohydrates like starches or fruits or vegetables, they just kind of sit there waiting for everything else to leave the stomach. And so when you mix like a really heavy protein like red meat, which can take a long time in your stomach, with a bunch of potatoes, that can just elongate the process and cause a lot of stomach symptoms. Stomach symptoms come very simply from eating really quickly and overfilling your stomach. And that there's the tube that comes up from your stomach, there's a sphincter at the top, and there's a sphincter at both sides, at the top and the bottom. The sphincter at the top stays open until the pH of your stomach becomes acidic enough, and then it closes. And a lot of problems come from that sphincter staying open. And it stays open when we overfill our stomach, when we fill our stomach past the 80% mark, when we drink a whole bunch of liquid with our meal, like say we drink an entire mug or 2 or 5 with your meal, and now we've diluted that acid even more, and the stomach is just right full. Well, the stomach contents has to go somewhere, and it usually goes right back up the esophagus. And you can have acid in your stomach, just not acidic enough to close the sphincter. So say your stomach gets to a pH of 4, which is really quite acidic. but that's not enough to close the sphincter, and that can lead to a lot of acid reflux symptoms. If your stomach becomes really weak and it's not even making enough acid to create that burning, then we get symptoms of regurgitation, where food goes up your esophagus and goes right back down, and it's really unpleasant, as unpleasant to have as it is to hear what I just described. And that's really common when the stomach is struggling. And so symptoms of the stomach imbalance is that acid reflux, but it also is symptoms of protein not breaking down properly, because that's what's digested in the stomach. So that could be food allergies can come from a weak stomach, even though that's happening in the small intestine, just simply because the stomach wasn't able to break down that protein properly. You can also get certain mineral deficiencies. Calcium and iron both need a very acidic environment for to be ionized for proper absorption. And so if you're chronically low in iron and your intake is fine and there's no reason for this low iron, it could simply be from the fact that your stomach is weak and not helping you absorb that iron properly. So the stomach is really important, and a lot of problems that happen later in your digestive system can stem from your stomach. So you may have a very strong intestinal problem, but if we were to take a whole look at your digestive system, it could be the stomach that's creating all the problems. One interesting symptom of your stomach being off is food going all the way through your digestive system a little bit too acidic, because there's a pH change in the small intestine that needs, so pH is really important in your digestive system. When your stomach is very acidic, it then goes into your, those contents go into your small intestine. That triggers an alkalization of it. It's the acid that triggers the alkalization. If you're not acidic enough, you don't change it to the alkaline state, and it can go all the way through your digestive system, and it can come out feeling a little acidic. So if you're feeling acidic bowel movements, that's also a stomach symptom, even though that is days later in a completely different organ. I hope that was clear. If not, just write me a little question and I'll re-explain that one. I didn't feel clear as I explained it. So symptoms of the imbalance, of a stomach imbalance, is heartburn and acid reflux, things like burping, heaviness in your stomach. So your stomach is not around your belly button. Your stomach is actually right underneath your rib cage. So if after eating you kind of go, oh, I'm so full, and you're feeling the pressure above your belly button, just below your rib cage, that's your stomach. And that's a really common symptom of an overwhelmed stomach, is just that heaviness in your stomach. You can also feel burning in that area, or a really tight band. And so always keep in mind your stomach is your upper abdomen, above your belly button, below your rib cage, not lower. Anything lower is intestinal. And we always call that our stomach, and it's not where our stomach is. So just keep that in mind. If that area just under your rib cage is the tender spot, then chances are we need to work on your stomach. Next, we're going to look at the small intestine, and the small intestine is an incredibly important part of our digestive system, and it's huge. We have 23 to 25 feet of small intestine stuffed in our abdomen. And it's really stuffed in there. And it's also this giant surface area. The small intestinal tract is where everything is absorbed, where all of our nutrients is absorbed. There's only a little bit that's absorbed in our colon. Most of it happens here in our small intestine. And to do that, it has this huge surface area. If we were to stretch our small intestine out, so it's completely flat, it would be the size of a small tennis court. It's also only one single cell layer thick. So the difference between the food that's in your small intestine and your bloodstream and your immune system is one single cell layer. To protect that, there's one single cell layer of bacteria. And the way we get this incredibly large surface area is in the picture on the bottom. So what we have are these ridges that are going up and down in your small intestine, and then there's these little villi on top of those, and then on that are these hair-like microvilli. It's the hair-like microvilli where the absorbency is happening, where that single cell layer is. And this is one of the most important places of our body. 80% of our immune system lives around our gut, and it's there because so much is being absorbed in our small intestine. Our gut and our gut bacteria regulate our immune system, so it's a very important colony, and it's literally where all of our food goes through the final digestive breakdown, and where the enzymes break it down, and where it's all absorbed. So this is where single proteins, single amino acids or fatty acids or carbohydrates, as well as vitamins and minerals, go through that single cell layer and go into the bloodstream. They go straight to the liver and they get put back together. So when the small intestinal tract gets damaged, that damages our ability to absorb. Celiac disease is the most extreme version of that. And if you are somebody with celiac disease, that's a major gluten intolerance, and it's an autoimmune condition. What happens is our immune system attacks our intestinal tract and flattens all of those villi. So instead of having a surface area as large as a small tennis court, it's now down to the 22 feet long, opened up. And that's a huge difference in absorbency. And so that's where all of the nutrient deficiencies are. When you have some small intestinal imbalances, they tend to start with severe gas and bloating. This is the kind of bloating that you feel pregnant. When somebody comes to me and they say they're really bloated, and I say, can you see it? They're like, yes. And they can say they look a couple months pregnant to 8 months pregnant. That's how big the small intestinal tract can blow up. It blows up just like a balloon, and it's 22 feet in there. So bloating is a big deal when it comes, or a big deal symptom when it comes to the small intestinal tract. Lesser felt symptoms of the small intestinal tract is food sensitivities. That's because undigested protein can go through a break in the intestinal wall. So say that single cell layer is a bit broken. That's called leaky gut, and undigested protein can leak through, and they get into the bloodstream. Because they're not digested, they don't go to the liver to be utilized in your body. Instead, they stay in the bloodstream. To your immune system, they look just like a virus or a bacteria, and they attack them just like a virus or a bacteria. So when there's a small intestinal breakdown or an issue, sometimes food sensitivities can come from that. Your immune system is also is bound and highly regulated by the bacteria in your small intestinal tract and your colon. And it's your bacteria that tells your immune system when to react and when not to react. And so if there's a problem here, your immune system can be upregulated, it can be overwhelmed, and then that can lead to things like allergies and autoimmune conditions. I'm going to be talking about that topic in a lot more detail in my December webinar. So stay tuned for that if you're dealing with those issues. But just in a nutshell, it's related to small intestinal issues, and everything we're doing, we're going to talk about Define Balance, can help with those as well. Last but certainly not least is the colon. The colon is much smaller compared to the small intestine. It's about 5 to 6 feet, and it's where it's kind of, the best way to think about the colon is as a storage area. The digestive process is about 2 to 4 hours in the stomach, sometimes 6, sometimes a bit longer, about 2 hours in your small intestinal tract. A lot happens in those 2 hours. And then the rest of the time of your digestive system lives in your colon. So food starts moving much, much slower when it comes to your colon. Food can be here for 12 hours to, I have heard stories from one of my colleagues of a man who had a transit time, which means the time that takes for food to go all the way through his digestive system. His was 30 days. So that's the longest I've seen somebody has food stuck in their colon. A week is not uncommon, and the colon just simply stretches to make make room. So what you want is about 3 meals into your colon. But if you're dealing with chronic constipation, or if you have dealt with chronic constipation, your colon might be stretched both width-wise as well as length, and that can lead to a whole host of other problems. Most of your gut bacteria lives here. 90% of the bacteria in your body lives in your colon. Instead of a single cell layer like we have in the small intestine, we have about 200 cell layer of bacteria, plus a much thicker wall of the colon. And this is where water is absorbed, a bit of vitamin K, a bit of some B vitamins, but mostly this is just storage. So it comes into the colon a lot wetter, and as it goes through, water is sucked out until you're ready for a bowel movement. And it is only tied in 2 places right under your ribs on each side. And so sometimes symptoms of pain can be your colon up there. So colon symptoms can be similar to small intestinal symptoms. Gas and bloating is a big one. What I find with the colon is there's more of the gas, particularly the smelly gas, like the passing of the gas, when it's a colon imbalance, and there's bloating, but it's not as visible. The small intestine being so big, you can just blow it up like a balloon. The colon being a lot smaller, it doesn't really show bloating, but you feel full, like you can feel the air in there. Sometimes you can literally feel the air move through, but it's not as blown up like a balloon. Cramping and pain is really common, and this is where diarrhea and constipation come from. So if you're dealing with those forms of irregularity, it tends to be a colon problem. Kind of diagnosable conditions in the colon are things like diverticulosis or diverticulitis. And if you look on that little picture, let me go back one. So if you look on this picture, there's these little humps. And what diverticulitis or diverticulosis, let's start there, is when due to chronic constipation, usually the pressure pushes out one of these, so it gets really big. And it usually happens, this is the descending part of the colon goes up, over, and down, and it's usually in this area that we get diverticulosis. Diverticulitis is when one of those pockets gets inflamed, and that can be a big problem. It can lead to sepsis, which is bacteria from your colon getting into the rest of your abdominal cavity, and you don't want that. And so sometimes people can have multiple pockets. The pockets are really common, so don't be too concerned. If you have them, they're usually found in just routine colonoscopies. It's when they get inflamed that it's a problem, and you want to keep the colon moving well so they don't get inflamed. Colitis is a autoimmune condition that creates ulcers all through the colon. Crohn's disease is another condition in the same category as colitis, which can also hit the colon, but the difference between Crohn's and colitis is Crohn's can hit anywhere in the intestinal tract. So you can get the ulcers all through your small intestinal tract, your stomach. You can get it almost anywhere in the body, but they're usually through the whole digestive tract. Colitis, only in the colon. That's, in a nutshell, the difference between the two. So now that you know what's going on in your digestive system, we have the stomach, the small intestine, and the colon. Now what we need to do is find balance. And finding balance is a lot easier than it usually looks. I'm not a big proponent of big cleanses and big dietary changes, but if you are currently housebound due to your digestive issues, that might be a good idea for you. But if you're just dealing with even if it's a lot, even if you're in pain or it's a problem for you, frequently 1 or 2 of these little changes can make a huge difference. And we're actually going to start with one that's going to look so easy, but is actually really hard, but is by far the most effective. So we're going to look at that. I'm giving you a heads up, and then we're going to get into a lot easier stuff that kind of looks harder. So this one is almost an underwhelming kind of thing, and it's digestive habits. Digestive habits can solve so many problems, particularly if most of your issues are in the stomach. So when we're looking at the stomach and looking at the acid reflux or the heaviness, all of those issues in the stomach, this is the best way to solve stomach problems. This is by far the hardest thing I give my clients. And they usually don't like me very much while they're doing it, and that's okay. So you can sit at your dinner table and curse me, and I'm cool with that because I know you're going to feel better. And so just keep going. Do whatever you need to do just to keep going. It takes about 2 weeks to get it as a habit. And then once it's a habit, it's hard to fall off it, but it's a hard 2 weeks. So the 3 steps of good digestive habits is always being relaxed while eating. Stress shuts down our digestive system, particularly the stomach. And when we are feeling, say we're eating at our desk, in front of our computer, in the car, in front of the TV, watching really gory TV shows like I used to, all of this is a problem when it comes to your digestive system. If you're under any sort of stress whatsoever, your digestive system is not working as well. So you want to take a few deep breaths and be really relaxed while you're eating. Then you want to chew, and chewing is a new habit that most of us have to develop. If you have had children, chances are you're not a very good chewer. If you grew up in a family of really fast eaters, then you're probably not a very good chewer. And this is really, really important. So the way to be able to chew well, and this is probably the easiest way to chew well, and it's still hard, is when you take a bite, you put your fork down, and then you chew. If you are sitting in front of the TV and your bowl or plate of food is right in front of you, you're just going to do this. So everything has to go down, and then you have to pay attention to chewing. When I did this, I was a terrible chewer, and I literally chewed 3 times and then swallowed. And I had to work really hard at retraining my swallowing reflex. That was probably one of the hardest things I did. I kept wanting to swallow, and I didn't, and I couldn't because I hadn't chewed yet. So putting your fork down and just being aware of it makes a huge difference. Eating with chopsticks because you eat smaller bites, that can help. These are little tricks to just get you into the habit. But what you'll notice is a very fast change in that heaviness in your stomach. The heaviness will go away pretty quickly, and a lot of your stomach symptoms, especially if you're dealing with a lot of acid reflux, can go down. The last one is no liquids with meals. And what I'm talking about is you can have a little bit, like if you have a mug, maybe that much, but 4 ounces. There's a great Ayurvedic saying, a small amount of a liquid fuels the digestive fire, so sipping on a little bit. Too much puts it out. So if you were to drink, this is my water glass, if I was to drink all of this, which is a full liter, which I used to do, I had terrible digestive habits, that will guarantee cause a whole bunch of digestive problems, including long-term stomach weakness, which we can fix, but it's a big process. So just sipping on a little bit of water, chewing really well, and being relaxed with that while eating can make a huge difference. A transit time test is also a great way to just see how your digestive system is doing. How is your colon doing in particular? And what it is simply looking at how long does food take to go through your digestive system. To do so is really simple. You eat a meal that includes something you can see on the way out. The 2 big ones are beets and corn, because you see both of those, and you eat them, and you write down when you eat them, and then you notice when you see them. And your goal, or what the healthy transit time, is 18 to 24 hours. Under 12, your digestive system or your transit time is too short, and you're probably not absorbing your food very well. If it's coming out whole, it's really not absorbing it well. If it's longer than 24 hours, especially if it's longer than 48 hours, now you're in that category where your colon can start stretching, as well as it's a stress on the liver because food is just sitting there kind of rotting for too long. I'm sorry, that's really unpleasant, but it's kind of what's happening, and it will send toxins to your liver. So you want to make sure your colon is working and as happy as possible, and knowing what your transit time is the best way. Whenever I'm eating a meal that includes either one of those, I use it as a transit time test. And so usually once a month or so, I have one, and it does work really, really well. Next, we're going to look at 3 steps to rebalance your gut bacteria. Your gut bacteria is a huge part of how your digestive system works. Most digestive symptoms, other than just basic acid reflux, is due to gut bacteria imbalance. So cramping and pain, irregularity, bloating, gas, all of these are digestive issues linked to your gut bacteria. And this is what we need to do to rebalance it. Each one of these steps can be done on their own and are really effective, or you can smash them all together and really rebalance your diet quickly. So the first step is seeding your gut, and this is putting new bacteria in to increase the diversity in your gut bacteria. What research is finding is when the diversity of we have an inner ecosystem. It's like what we want is the equivalent of a rainforest of bacteria. We want all these different strains all living together in a beautiful colony. What a lot of us have is the desert, where we have low numbers and we only have a handful of strains, and that environment is linked to low metabolism and obesity, autoimmune conditions, allergies, and depression and anxiety. I'm going to be getting into how the gut affects the brain in August, and you can sign up now for the August webinar. So that there's really cool connections between our gut bacteria and our mental health. We also, there's a strong connection in our inflammation, and what research has found that there is usually a change in gut bacteria 6 months before you can see inflammatory markers. So if you're dealing with a lot of inflammation, chances are, before that happens, 6 months earlier, there was a big change in your gut bacteria. That could have been around antibiotics. It could have been some food poisoning. It could have been drinking a lot of chlorinated water, or eating a lot of meat with antibiotic residue, and that's all red meats and farm salmon found at conventional grocery stores. So this change in gut bacteria really makes a difference. Bringing in a probiotic supplement just acts as a seed, and at first we need to take one every day, but after 3 to 6 months, you can take one every day for the rest of your life. There's no harm in that. But generally, if you found a really good probiotic supplement, then you can cut that down to every other day, every 3 or 4 days, but we generally need it at least once a week. And I argue this importance because we very recently in the human world had very dirty water and very poor sanitation and a lot of bacteria coming from dirt and our lifestyle outside. And that has changed in a very short period of time. And thankfully, we have clean water, and thankfully, we have sanitation. I'm not willing to trade any of those, but I'm not getting, and we aren't getting, these inputs of good bacteria that's on a regular basis. And so bringing in a probiotic supplement fixes that problem, so at least once a week. Look for human strain, multi-strain probiotics. There's some really great ones at health food stores, or generally in the fridge, but there's some great shelf-stable ones. And you just want to see a whole bunch of strains, and you want to see a good chunk of bifidobacteria, especially if your problems are in the colon. Colon needs bifido. Just generally, if you're dealing with even minor digestive symptoms, your best probiotic is one that works, one that you feel a difference within a month. If in one bottle of that probiotic you see no difference, then the next time you need a new probiotic, go buy another one, because there's a whole bunch of options. Don't stay on any probiotic if it's not solving your digestive symptoms, because that's what a good probiotic can do. The next thing we want to do is we want to feed our gut, and our gut bacteria's diet is entirely in our hands. Our gut bacteria eats what we eat, and we can make a measurable change in our gut bacteria in 7 days. So that's all it takes. All we need to do is add a bit more food into our diet, and we can change our gut bacteria. What we want to do is eat foods with tons of fiber, because fiber is the undigested stuff that goes all the way through our digestive system and feeds the bacteria in our colon. When we eat a high-processed, low-fiber diet, there's no food left for the bacteria in our colon, and it starts to die. It can feed way too many small intestinal bacteria, but is not feeding the colon bacteria. So lots and lots of dietary fiber from lots and lots of fruits and veggies. 10 servings a day is kind of what we need. If you're at 2, add 1. So just go add 1 at a time until you get to 10. Don't go from 0 to 10. That's hard on the gut as well. Eating fermented foods every day. We're gonna talk about that in the next slide, and enjoying healthy fats. Healthy fats are really, really important. They're important for lubrication through your colon. They're important for creating good cell walls. They're really, really important. If you have dry skin, you have dry intestinal tract. So make sure that you're getting enough healthy fats for lubrication. Fermented foods are such an important part of feeding our gut bacteria, because our gut bacteria loves fermented foods. Loves it. Absolutely the best way to create balance in your gut is adding fermented foods. This is what I did. This is the thing. This is the one step that worked better than anything else, is adding fermented foods. It just took me 10 years to get there. And it only takes 1 serving of fermented foods a day. That's it. You just need a couple forkfuls of sauerkraut, maybe some good quality yogurt or kefir. Research is finding kefir may be the best of the fermented foods, but that is just this one study, but it was quite promising. Raw milk cheese, kombucha, the fermented soys, miso, tempeh, natto, and sourdough bread is something I have regularly and properly done, no yeast. And wine and beer, and wine and beer only mildly help the gut bacteria. Research is finding that 1 drink a week can help our gut bacteria, but that's kind of where it sits. So it's not drinking regularly, or not drinking every day, but having something once in a while can make a difference. 1 serving a day. It's all you need to create a lot of power in your gut. Fermented foods are amazing. And let's see if this is going to change. Yeah, healing your gut is the last step. So if you're dealing with small intestinal problems in particular, if you're dealing with inflammation, autoimmune conditions, any of that leaky gut side, or you're concerned you might have leaky gut, doing this step isn't going to be harmful, even if your small intestinal tract is beautifully happy and healthy. You can just do this and just help your intestinal tract. It can be really powerful. So the first step is what's really in style right now. It's kind of one of the most fashionable foods right now, which is homemade bone stock. That's chicken, beef, fish, whatever bones you want. It kind of needs to be homemade because you want a really long simmer and a splash of vinegar. 12 to 24 hour simmer with that splash of vinegar pulls out the minerals as well as the collagen and gelatin. And it's the gelatin that's healing the intestinal tract. And it just takes about a serving a day, about a half a cup. That can make a big difference. If you're vegetarian, or if you are just not into the idea of making a big pot of bone stock because it's hot outside, aloe vera juice works really well as well. 2 to 4 to 8 ounces a day, so minimum 2 ounces, usually around 4 is a good idea. That does, if you've ever used if you've ever had a plant of aloe and put it on your skin when you've had a burn, you can see the power of aloe healing skin. Our intestinal tract is of the same family of cells, and aloe works beautifully for that. So taking that in can do the same benefit as the stock. It just doesn't have the minerals. Eating lots of cooked vegetables. If you're dealing with lots of digestive issues, raw vegetables are really, really hard to digest and really hard on the gut. So cooking and steaming your vegetables, having soaked grains if you tolerate them. Bring in that serving of fermented foods, even if you're dealing with a gut bacteria imbalance like Candida, where you're always told to stay away from fermented foods. That's wrong. Have the fermented foods. And then sometimes an elimination diet is necessary, and you may want some help going through that. What this is if you have a food sensitivity, you take out the big guys, gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and eggs. You take them out for about 2 weeks, and then if you feel better, then you add them back in 1 week at a time and see how they affect you. That's it in a nutshell. But it can be very effective to find out what your food sensitivities are. Through me, as well as through naturopaths, you can do food allergy testing, where it's a finger prick test, and what is tested is 220 foods, and it gives you what your body's reaction to each one is. So if you don't want to do the elimination diet, that's another way of getting to what's out of balance. But it is, this step can be done whether or not you have an issue, if you just simply suspect that you have an issue. And don't forget to ask for help. If you are really struggling with digestion and your digestive issues, find somebody who can help. It can really help having an outside person. That's what I do for most of my clients, is that I help kind of pull, I'm the outside perspective, I'm not inside, and I can see the puzzle of what's going on. I love a good puzzle. So I can piece together what's going on and give you a bit more direction. But if wherever you are, just bringing in one of these steps can make a huge difference. And that can, just one step at a time, can start changing things, and you can go from having big digestive issues to having them much more under control in a relatively short period of time. So that's the whole presentation. I apologize, it was a lot longer than 25 minutes. I really should have timed it better. And I'm going to open up the floor for questions in about 2 minutes. I just want to let you know about our next webinar. So July's webinar is the surprising importance of summer eating. It's on July 20th. When this recording is sent out, I will send you links to sign up for this one, as well as August on the gut-brain connection. If you're watching the recording, just find that email and you can sign up for it there. So I'm going to dive into the questions. If you have any questions, just add them into the chat area. If this is all the time you've had, thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate you staying for this whole presentation. I really love doing this, and I only get to do it because you guys trade your evening for the information. So I hope it was really worthwhile to you. I really appreciate you coming, and please stick around, because I'm going to get into all of the questions, and I'm going to stay here until the questions are answered. So the first question is from Cornelia. Should you take calcium before you eat your meal? Great question. Because calcium is needed, it needs that acidic environment. You need to be taking your calcium at least with food. So either just before, right during, or just after. It doesn't need to be as perfect as exact timing. You just need it in your stomach in the same time as that food is going in, so the acids can help you absorb your calcium supplement. You also want to keep your calcium supplement to no more than 500 milligrams at a time. Research is finding that that's the most we can absorb at once, and taking more than that not only stops the absorption of more than 500, but it actually starts reducing the absorption of the original 5. So if you are taking in 1,000 at a time, you may actually be absorbing less than 500. So just keep it at 500, and adding magnesium really helps as well. Kristen asks a good question when it comes to digestive habits, which is, when is the best time to drink in relation to meals? That was my problem when I had to start doing this, is I was really dehydrated all the time. I need enormous amounts of water. That's why my water glass is a 1-liter jar. And I found it was really difficult. So what you want to do, and I was also eating all day, so my stomach was rarely empty. I had to fix that. So you want to be drinking on an empty stomach. And what that simply means is you want to be drinking up to 20 minutes before you eat, and then waiting at least an hour, possibly 2 if you're dealing with a lot of digestive issues or had a very heavy meal, before you start drinking liquids again. So wait at least an hour after meals. And what I usually do after an hour is I'll make tea instead, because I won't just guzzle it down, and I'll be sipping on it. So when I just can't wait any longer, I'll make myself a cup of tea. I don't feel, this isn't as big of an issue now, but this is how I dealt with it when I was first trying to eliminate liquids with meals, and I was struggling. So what I do is make a cup of tea, and then I would have to wait till it cooled down. So that gave me another 20 minutes, but at least I knew water was coming, and then I sipped on it, and that made a big difference. So wait at least an hour. 2 is even better. Kim asks, is it possible to completely rebalance gut bacteria that's been out of balance since childhood? Great question, Kim. The answer is yes, but it's hard. When you are about between the ages of 3 and 5, that is when you get what is considered adult gut bacteria. And our body seems to think, and this is all, we're not 100% sure. And so the research may contradict this next year, because the new research on gut bacteria comes out constantly. But what we think right now is when we are about 5, we then have adult gut bacteria, because we're eating adult food. And that is what our body thinks is the proper gut bacteria. And our appendix, its job is to hold the balance of gut bacteria that your body thinks is correct in your appendix. And so anytime everything gets wiped out, your appendix repopulates the rest of your gut. If you don't have an appendix, you always have to make sure you repopulate your gut after antibiotics or food poisoning. So Kim, if you, like me, had probably an imbalance when you were young, then there's a good chance that your body thinks off is actually on. And this was one of my struggles, and I thought that maybe this is just how it is, that my body is always going to be kind of off. And I worked really hard to be kind of on. But what I found was adding fermented foods in particular, and just finding the right probiotic, I was able, over a long period of time, fermented foods, it took a long time, and then fermented foods sped it up, but I was doing it for a few years before I got to fermented foods. I found every year was a little bit better, and then fermented foods created a real stability in it. So I believe that yes, it's possible. It just takes a while. You kind of have to retrain your gut into realizing that the strains that aren't the best, and that makes no sense. So let me try that again. We have to try to get our body to understand that a different balance of gut bacteria is actually a good balance, and that can simply take some time. So at first you have to work really hard to keep that in balance, and then eventually, at least in my body, I've been able to find balance. Other clients I've worked with have been able to find a balance a lot faster, but I'm also not with them on a day-to-day basis, so I'm not sure what happens afterwards. I just know in my body it took a while, and it was really stubborn and would go off all the time, sometimes by just thinking about it, but now it's really created a lot of stability, and now I have to do a lot to throw my gut off. Janine asks, how much is a serving of apple cider vinegar? About a tablespoon is a serving of apple cider vinegar. So generally with fermented foods, the fermented vegetables is a couple tablespoons or a couple forkfuls. A apple cider vinegar is a tablespoon or 2, and that can even help your stomach if you're struggling with digestion. So that's a good digestive as well. It's meowing is my cat. He's complaining that dinner is late. And the fermented soy is like a few ounces, and kombucha is maybe a cup or 2. You can have more than this, but that's usually all that you need. What I usually do is I have sauerkraut in my fridge. I have tempeh regularly for dinner. I have some kombucha usually when I'm traveling, and that's where I get my fermented foods mostly from now. Pamela asked, does sauerkraut have an expiry date? It's not on the jar. So with sauerkraut, you want to be looking for sauerkraut that's in the fridge and unpasteurized. And there's if you live in the Okanagan, there's 2 big brands with a couple new ones. Bubby's and Cartines have been around for a long time. Cartines is quite sour. Bubby's is a bit salty. There's a bunch of new ones. I think it's called Farmhouse Culture. It's a fairly new one. There's new ones coming out all the time, and I haven't tried them, so I don't know what they taste like. Fermented foods in general have a long expiry date. They're fermented for longevity. That's why we used to ferment them. I did find that my sauerkraut that was probably 9 months to a year old lost all flavor and was kind of unpleasant. But otherwise, as long as it's not growing mold, it's not growing anything, and still has its sourness or the proper flavor, it's probably okay. And it does usually last for quite a few months as long as it stays under the liquid. So you have to always pack it down under the liquid. Fermenters, people who are doing their own ferments all the time, would have a better answer for you, but that's my understanding of it. But if you are a fermenter, or if you know somebody who's a fermenter and they say, no, Lisa was wrong on that, then yeah, they're right, because they're the experts in that. Maureen is asking, does rabiprazole, I'm terrible at medication names, 20 milligrams every second day for acid reflux have any negative side effects? So for that question, I have to preface it as I'm a holistic nutritionist, and therefore taking my advice on medications is not necessary. Do not change any medications whatsoever without talking to your doctor or pharmacist. Generally, so now I'm going to just speak to the population of acid reflux medications and what they're doing and how they can affect the body. And I don't know your medication specifically. It's not one that I've worked with, so I can't speak to it directly. But generally, medications for acid reflux tend to lower the acid level. You are on a lower dose. Only taking it every other day is definitely a lower amount. It's not working as strongly. That reducing of acid can affect both protein digestion as well as mineral absorption, leading to some mineral deficiencies and possibly, and there's no research on this, but this is just anecdotally, could lead to more food sensitivities. Definitely does lead to some mineral deficiencies. The reason to take these medications is the constant irritation in your esophagus from acid reflux can lead to Barrett's esophagus. I might have mispronounced that one. So if you're a medical professional, I apologize for not pronouncing that correctly. But what that means is it's a damaged esophagus that leads to a higher possibility of esophageal cancer. And esophageal cancer is not one that you want to have. You don't want any cancer. Esophageal cancer is a particularly nasty one. So there is a time and a place for acid reflux medications. We do want to stop the pushing of acid up into the esophagus. Using things like the digestive habits that we just spoke about can help reduce your need for the acid reflux medications, and then speaking to your pharmacist or your doctor about possibly reducing can be effective. With one of my clients that I worked with who worked with her doctor to reduce her medication, and she had severe issues, she was able to bring it down to every 2 or 3 days. And I've seen that happen with quite a few people, is that they still need a little bit of it, but they are able to reduce it quite a lot, or they're able to completely go off it. But definitely work with your doctor or pharmacist and have that discussion before changing any medications. Keeping in mind that you may have some mineral deficiencies, so increase the minerals in your diet, and that can offset those. Kim asks, what's the main thing that regulates body pH? Is that food? I hear we become more acidic as the day progresses. Why is that? So the pH of the body and the pH of the digestive system are two different conversations. So what we've talked about is the acidic stomach moving to an alkaline small intestine. When we talk about body pH, we're talking about how food affects blood pH in particular. And our blood has to stay in this really narrow pH of 7.35 to 7.45. It's really, really narrow. And our body needs to do a whole bunch of stuff to make sure it stays in that really narrow pH. And all of the inputs, all of the things going into our body affects that. So our food is definitely one input. The air we breathe is a big input, and the lack of air we breathe is a big input. Stress is a huge input because we don't breathe as deeply. And carbon dioxide is acid forming, and oxygen is alkalizing. Taking big, deep breaths is wonderful for your body's pH. Fatty acids and amino acids or protein, those have an acidic residue in the body, and everything full of minerals like fruits and vegetables has an alkaline residue. Processed food, acidic. So all we want to do is balance those two out, and that can make it easier for our body to create that specific narrow blood pH. There's a lot of misinformation about the pH diet, including that if you have cancer or any chronic illness, that means your blood is acidic. That's impossible. Your body will not allow your blood to be acidic, because if it is, you're not alive anymore. You can't survive with acidic blood. So I can guarantee your blood is alkaline no matter what your health issue is. It's how hard is your body working to make it at that pH, and that is the story with the blood pH. When it comes to how your pH changes through the day, generally we test our urine pH, and that is what can change through the day. Generally, we actually become more alkaline through the day. We start in the morning slightly acidic, our urine pH is slightly acidic, and then later in the day, it's quite alkaline. Here's the cat. Here's Sam. He's the one who's been meowing. And they, what the idea is our urine is showing what the repercussions of what our body is doing. So if our body is trying to work out, hi Sam, if our body is trying to work out acids, it will excrete acids in the urine. If it's quite alkaline, then your urine will be alkaline. That is a possibility. Some research has shown that is quite possible, but the research on pH is scanty and not necessarily all that reliable. So I wouldn't necessarily go by it. If you're under a lot of stress, your urine pH may get more acidic as it goes. I have found in my body, when my urine pH is around 7 or neutral, I feel great. And so that's why I abide by it. But overall, it is something to look at, but don't put too much weight on right now, other than it is a really healthy diet. Lorna asks, medication and vitamins usually say take with food. When do I take them? Take them with food. You just don't want to take them with a lot of water. And that's the hard part if you have a handful of medications and vitamins. Many probiotics, all vitamins and all minerals, anything that comes from food needs to be eaten with food. And so if you need large amounts of water, for that can affect your digestion of your meal. So it's weighing the balance of using as little liquid as possible while also not choking yourself with these pills. If you can divide them up through the day, that can help. So it might be that the liquid that you drink with your meal is entirely used for your supplements, and that's okay. And sometimes you just need more just to prevent choking. Don't choke on your supplements. So that is all of the questions. You guys had really great questions tonight. I really appreciate all of you who stuck around right to the end. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I really appreciate your time. Let me know if you have any questions or comments or feedback. My email address is lisa@lisakilgore.com. It's on the screen right now, or you can find it on my website, lisakilgore.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you're watching the recording, thank you so much for watching the whole thing. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them to me. I hope you have a lovely night, and thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.